125 years ago, on Wednesday, the 21st of March 1900, the Torbanlea Colliery near Maryborough in Queensland had a methane explosion that resulted in the deaths of 5 mine workers. 4 years earlier, there'd been another fatal methane explosion at the mine. There was a royal commission to determine the cause of the explosion. The world was a different place in 1900. Australia was still a collection of British colonies. Australia's federation wasn't until 1901. There was no refrigeration in homes, there was no sewerage. Antibiotics would not be invented for another 30 years. The Wright brothers hadn't taken their first flight, and the first car had only been invented only 15 years earlier, but not yet mass-produced. Radios were still being invented. Mining was very basic, and it's not like it is today. Queensland had no specific coal mining legislation, there were no statutory certificates, or any prescribed mining competencies. The Torbanlea Colliery hand-mined the Torbanlea seam, which dipped at an angle of 1 in 3.5 and was accessed by the number 3 shaft, approximately 120 metres deep, to the main horse road, which then extended approximately 620 metres across to a 30-metre down-throw fault. A stone drive accessed the mine workings. Access to the coal was via the levels and the main dip, with a winder at the top of the dip located in the engine room. A mine fan provided approximately 14,000 cubic feet of ventilation per minute, which is only about 6.5 cubic metres per second. A pillar crush was occurring in the mine, and following the extraction of the final pillars, the mine was planned to be closed in a few days' time following the extraction of those final pillars. 19 miners were in the mine at the time of the explosion, 16 in the dip workings. A group of 5 miners were working at the site of the explosion. 9 others were working on the 100-yard level, only approximately 20 metres from the site of the explosion. 2 others were adjacent to the site of the explosion. The explosion was a weak methane explosion, limited only to the area where the ignition occurred, which may be described as an unconfined explosion, resulting in minimal damage from the explosive forces, but a longer flame duration, resulting in more serious burns to those who are affected. This is similar to the Grosvenor explosions near Maryborough in 2020. Similar to Grosvenor, others in the mine were not affected by the explosion, and those in the explosion experienced life-threatening burns. At Torbanlea, all but one of the injured workers were able to self-escape. Only one miner, Frederick Griggs, had to be rescued, which took approximately 30 minutes. No one was killed in the explosion. All of the miners were transported to the Maryborough Hospital, which is approximately 25 kilometres away, via a special train. Some of the miners survived for some time after the explosion. Johnston died the following day, Alexander Houston survived a further 5 days, and Amos Gamby survived for 12 days after the explosion. Due to the absence of methane in the mine workings, naked lights were used, which was clearly the source ignition for the explosion. The Royal Commission then considered all possible sources of methane for the explosion, and although no conclusive evidence was found to determine the actual source of methane for the explosion, due to the very small nature of the explosion, it's likely that the methane came from a source in close proximity to the site of the explosion, possibly the floor. The Royal Commission found that in Queensland mines, the provisions of the Mining Act are to a great extent disregarded on the part of mine management. In particular, the inspections of the mine before miners are allowed to proceed to their workplace, and the entry of that inspection report in the mine record book, the keeping of an accurate plan at the office of the mine, and the minimum ventilation quantities required for the safe operation of the mine. The Commission found that in the majority of cases, the persons who were employed to manage mines were very much below the standard in intelligence and the knowledge of mining required for such important and responsible positions. The provision of the legislation that allowed for workers' inspections of the mine was not used in Queensland, and only one mine had allowed that, and that was 10 years prior to the disaster. The Royal Commission recommended a Board of Examiners and certificates of competency for mine management. Those positions and certificates remained in place for almost 100 years until the reforms following the Maryborough mine disaster in 1994, when the certificate holders demonstrated a lack of competence. A new scheme was implemented in the Maryborough reforms in 1999, which is now being changed back to the statutory positions with the certificates of competency, which was proven not to work for almost a century. In 2008, the Queensland Board of Examiners found that persons were being appointed to positions at mines that did not have the necessary competencies. 125 years after the Torbanlea Mine disaster, the issue of competency remains unresolved. Inspections of mines must be made prior to the commencement of work and completed with a locked flame safety lamp. Safety lamps were recommended for the working of mines where methane had been detected in the mine, and minimum ventilation requirements were recommended. Specific coal mining legislation was recommended following the Torbanlea disaster, but not implemented. The Queensland Government waited another 25 years until the Mt Mulligan Mine Disaster, Queensland's worst mine disaster, killing 75 miners, before they realised that coal mining required specific coal mining legislation. The Mt Mulligan Royal Commission made the same recommendation. It was implemented in 1925. 125 years after the Torbanlea Mine disaster, the world has changed. Mining has changed, but the hazards remain the same. We remember the miners lost in the Torbanlea Mine disaster with great respect and continue to work to ensure the safety, health and well-being of every miner every day. MSIA is committed to assisting you to learn from mine accidents and disasters, lest we forget.